engrave my time at St Andrews University on a sea of alcohol, blitzed from Raisin Mondays, a tradition where new students were assisted by their seniors in adapting to university life, through to my 4th year, when I abandoned an honours degree for an ordinary. It was Saturday, the 16th of September, 1978. My father was climbing, and I promised to call round to see my mother, check up on her. When I arrived, I didn't need a key to get into the house, which was unusual because my mother always locked the outside door when she was in bed, just in case. Experiencing the usual feeling of anxiety mingled with relief to be home, I went upstairs to the sitting room and sat down heavily in my armchair, desperate to take the weight off my feet. I was fitter since I'd cut down on drinking 6 months before. The reality of my medical problems was finally hitting home. Nevertheless, if I needed to drink for the psychological boost, I did so, despite vomiting most of it back up. It made me feel ashamed, but that didn't stop me. The house was quiet, lacked life, apart from the odd noise from outside. A snarling dog, a neighbour shouting, cars in the street. At least when I lived at home, there was music. Now there was nothing. It was lunchtime. I wondered how much my mother would have had to drink today. Eventually, I steeled myself to go and see what state she was in, heading first to the kitchen. There was a huge stack of unwashed dishes by the sink, a few days old by the looks of them. I looked in the fridge and found packets of out-of-date meat. There were letters unopened on the worktop. I slid on a chunk of cooking fat, cursed, and looked for the yellow gloves my mother never wore. I noticed how my once red, chapped, swollen hands had all but returned to normal, living away from the scene of compulsive domesticity. I still liked to clean until my hands were sore. I realized I was hungry, and seeing some vegetables in a rack, I stood at the window peeling a few potatoes, putting off the moment I always dreaded. In the garden below, everything looked the same as ever, a few flowers, an assortment of shrubs. Roses growing up the trellis, trained by my father's green wiring, and carefully pruned. I spotted 2 crows strutting about the lawn where the grass hadn't been cut for months. One of the birds cawed so loudly, I felt myself shiver. I pulled my hands out of the soapy water, dried them on a towel, went through and stood outside my mother's bedroom. I opened her door as quietly as I could, my energy sapping with every slow turn of the handle. I stuck my head round and saw the room was as gloomy as ever. Drawn curtains were not unusual in this house, especially in the middle of the afternoon. They were my mother's most forceful statement, a testimony to her isolation from the rest of the world. The first thing I noticed was her bedside lamp lying on the floor, its bulb dead, having burned a hole in the carpet, right through to the wood. I could see the brown patch from where I was standing. It was large, deep, and heavily singed. It was lucky nothing had caught fire. Next to it, in a disorganized heap, was my mother. Her head looked awkward, as if it had been screwed onto her body, back to front. She lay on her right side, facing the door, maximum impact, guaranteed to shoot her. The surprise element in a drinker's life tended to inspire the pause, the little accident. She was wearing her old blue dressing gown, which gaped down the middle, displaying her bruised thighs and bony knees, calves covered in tiny grey-green veins and more bruises. Her arms were outstretched, mouth wide open, saliva running down her chin and down the front of her dressing gown. She had vomited on the carpet near where the lamp had fallen. Out of the corner of my unwilling eye, I could see a mouse waddling across the room, stopping briefly over by the window to perch on hind legs and twitch its nose. I shuddered, wondering how long it had been there. It looked elderly and pitiful, the way my mother had always looked in the days that she used to plod home with her secret stash of booze. The mouse was heading for the wardrobe. Moving so slowly, I began to think it was 2 were worth pushing in on. I wanted to go to Mummy, but my legs wouldn't move. I clung instead to the door for support. I could see 2 empty bottles of vodka and pills of various colours scattered around her. She was dead. The moment I had been dreading so long was here, and I didn't want to know. I backed out of the room, shut the door with a bang, and walked back to the kitchen to finish peeling the potatoes, the old-fashioned way with a knife. I was holding the knife so tightly my knuckles began to ache with the strain, peeling large chunks off the potatoes instead of just removing the skin. The wasted lumps of vegetables were filling the sink along with the salty tears splashing down my cheeks. Mommy, I did love you. The words blocked my throat, even as a voice inside my head asked, did you really love her that much? Okay, I replied, I know. I really only came home to check she was still alive, and I don't feel guilty. I promised myself all those years I wouldn't when the time came. It's just that I never expected it to come. You don't. She'd been in her room most of the time for the last 5 years. I did what I could. They say guilt is passive. I have never thought so. Guilt is what happens when someone you love drinks. More than they love you. Loves drink more than they love you. You watch them rotting away in front of you. But you can't do anything to stop them. It's the acuteness of that feeling, the overwhelming powerlessness, which destroys you in the end. Life shouldn't be that way. You feel it must be your fault for not being lovable enough. I felt guilty all my life, first for leaving the house to go to school. And later for trying